Hey everyone, welcome to the Worship Artistry podcast brought to you by your friends at Worship Artistry. Today, I am Jason Houtsma, as always, and today I'm here with Josh Ward.
What's going on, guys?
And over in the chat room, as always, we have Bethany just hanging out with all the folks in there. So guys, if you have a question, just go ahead and do it in message form on that right-hand side, and Bethany will compile them and actually bring them over to the end for questions at the end so we can speak directly to any questions you might have. So today, as I mentioned, Josh is the drum instructor at Worship Artistry, and so we thought, hey, let's talk about how to get the most out of a drummer. He should know a little something about that.
I know.
You ready for this, Josh?
I'm ready, man. Send it my way.
Oh, my brain I can't look at the comment thing, otherwise I get confused.
It's distracting, man, because you want to talk
distracting.
You want to talk to everybody.
One of us might have some ADD going on here. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about that, but first let's go ahead and do some member mail. So we actually got some great comments. I actually got an email this week that ended. It was a guy asking a question about a guitar amp, and then he ended the comment with, "And a swig of soda for the working man." Does that mean anything to you? Because I don't know what that means. Like, who is swigging the soda? Is he handing me a swig of soda? Is he asking me to give him a swig of soda? Who's the working man in the equation? You're from the South. That sounds like it might be more of a Southern kind of a.
I think
kind of a deal. Are you familiar with that?
I think the term swig is from the South. We don't usually use the word soda down here. So maybe
it's true.
So like maybe he's like in the middle. I have no idea.
Maybe he's trying to reach out. He's straddling the line between the North and the South. He's trying to make it work.
That's cracking me up.
I like that. I like the way you pulled that out. That was good. So for this week's though, so there was that. So I don't know if any of you guys have any idea about that. Let us know. But the question that we got this week in member mail was it just says, it's from Bud. It says, "Hey Jason, great podcast. You mentioned Tom Jackson's scale of intensity for a song, and considering that intensity when picking your first song or two in the set." That was from last week's podcast. If you didn't hear that about building a worship set, be sure to check that out. He then asked, could you maybe give a few examples of songs that you think are kind of in the 3 to 3.5 range for number one, and then going up to like for a 4 or a 5 and this for song number 2, that sort of thing. I like the way he went fractions. It was kind of like 3 and then 3.5. So I guess that's kind of in the middle between 3 and 4. What do you think, Josh? What are some of those good medium tempo starter tunes that you like?
A song that I recently played in a worship set here recently that it's just got a really good groove, and we did a lesson for it not too long ago, is Unstoppable God by Elevation. I love that song, man. Like, it's energetic, and then when you jump into the chorus, it's just like, pocket, like I love that. So
yeah, well, you're always going to drop into the pocket tunes.
I love that song. Another one would probably be on a 6/8 time signature. Ooh. Would be Good Father by Zealand. I like Zealand's version.
Yeah,
just a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a drummer. I don't know.
Did you actually notice that on the Chris Tomlin version, and it's around 1:18. I don't know if anybody knows that song, and if you listen to it, go check it out. It's around minute 1:18. You actually hear, really buried in the mix, you hear the Apple Mail like alert tone. You hear the little boom. It's in there. It's in like. I don't know. I thought maybe it was just from my computer, but I checked a number of different masters. It's all in there. And sometimes when you record stuff, other things kind of pop in and sounds make other stuff. But I swear that one's the Apple Mail. It just kind of comes right in. Just a nice little ambient tone in that tune.
Producer fail.
You don't know what was going on in his heart. Maybe he was just kind of like, hey, pay attention. Next line is a good one.
Yeah, could have been.
Yeah, I would say kind of some of my favorites kind of in that three range is like Matt Redman's 10,000 Reasons is a really good just starter song. Everybody can get behind it really well. God of Wonders is still like, I've used that example. I mean, I don't really play that song that much anymore, but I've used that as an example of the perfect number 3. It's just kind of like a statement song. When you start going up to more in the 4 or 5 range, Vertical Church's Open Up the Heavens is kind of it's another starter song. It's a real kind of high energy one. So I think that you might give that one a 3.5. That might be a 3.5. That would follow that. But, and then going up to 5, it's those ones that are just kind of like, you're there, everyone's excited, and you're just kind of giving it one more big energy song. So like a song like Chris Tomlin's Lay Me Down, or Christian Stanfield's Not Ashamed, those kind of just big anthem, upbeat, fast tunes. Those are the ones that I kind of put in the 5 range. So that's it for Member Mail. If you would like to be featured on Member Mail, just go to worshipartistry.com/greenroom, do a search for Member Mail in the search bar, and leave us a comment, and we'll try and get to it. All right, you want to take a break?
Sure.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back about how to get the most out of your drummer. Hey Josh, one of the most common comments we get here at Worship Artistry is that someone finally figured out how to teach on the internet. Should we tell the people what Worship Artistry is?
Sure. Worship Artistry is an online resource featuring full 5-piece band arrangements of all the latest worship songs.
Yeah, a lot of churches don't have the 12-piece band to cover all the parts on the latest tunes, but still want to sound like the original recording. Worship Artistry takes the master recordings and breaks them down into parts for electric, acoustic, bass, drums, and keyboard. And when you put them together on Sunday, they sound just like the record.
And what makes it so brilliant is the lessons are super easy to navigate, so your beginners get tons of video instructions with charts, tabs, and sheet music, while your advanced players can simply watch playthroughs of each part and be on their way.
The other thing that's beautiful is worship pastors can rest easily knowing we've done our homework in the licensing department, so it's all legit.
Yeah, man, no shady internet hijinks going on here.
So head over to worshipartistry.com and sign up for your free trial. Now let's get back to this podcast. So that's my favorite commercial so far, I think. Nice work, Josh.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, so today we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of the drummer. And, it's funny, we actually had some funny comments even on the website because we opened it up and asked everybody at Worship Artistry, hey, what do you want us to talk about? And one guy's, the very first response was, what should I feed my drummer? And then he answered himself already. He just said, the answer is bacon.
Bacon. That's awesome.
So I was like, okay, well, he answered his own question. Then he had a bunch of other ones, but it kind of brings up an interesting point because I think a lot of times as worship leaders, when we get a good drummer, we just sink our claws into them and we hang on to them and we don't let them leave. We just they're scheduled for everything because they make everything so much more fun for us. So we schedule them for everything and just kind of a lot of times burn them out. And then we treat them like a commodity. And then when we have, kind of younger drummers or kind of like coming up in the ranks, or maybe they're not very good yet, it's very difficult to work in a band scenario with that. So Josh, I wanted to ask you, you've drummed in a lot of different environments. You're the instructor at the website, but you've also played for a number of people. You play at church, you play, kind of play around quite a bit. I thought maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your experience just kind of growing up as a drummer in the church.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm from Pensacola, Florida, down here in the Panhandle, and I started playing in church. Oh, I was young, man. Middle school, I guess, 8th grade-ish. We'll say 8th grade. And it's crazy. I played, excuse me. I played my first actual gig. Was like a youth conference type thing, but it was real small. I grew up in a small church. And ever since that, they started using me in the regular worship service to play along with the choir tunes that they would sing. And it was literally playing along with a CD. Literally, I played with tracks.
Kind of like playing with tracks.
Yeah. It was way before playing with tracks was even a thing. So anyway, I started off there. Then I started going to a bigger church in the area, and I really wanted to get involved. They had a young adult college ministry that would meet on Tuesday nights. And at this time, I was actually playing in the worship service already for the regular church service. But I really wanted to play on Tuesday nights just because it was, the more contemporary type stuff. Basically all the new worship tunes that we played, it was a worship. I don't want to say concert, but it was a night of worship type thing. It was just a lot more fun, and so I wanted to play in that. So I kept hounding the worship leader who led that, and I got to know him real good. And one day the drummer couldn't make it, so this guy calls me and he's like, we'll give you a shot. So that was kind of like my first shot into like the actual like worship scene, like around the area, to kind of, I guess you could say, like started meeting people, started playing with people. So yeah, I've been playing in church is like my main thing. But I've played out and about a little bit, with different people, some country bands, whatnot. But grew up in church, started playing in church, typical church drummer bio. There you go.
So yeah, so did you take lessons or did you just start from scratch? Did you teach yourself? Did you bang on pots and pans until mom and dad finally bought you a drum kit, or how'd that work?
Yeah, so I started playing the trumpet in band, actually. That's how I got into music. I come from a musical family. Grandparents played the piano, guitars. Uncle played the trumpet. He's the one that got me started with that. So I came up playing trumpet through middle school and 1 year in high school. I marched, and I actually started taking trumpet lessons when I was like 4 years old. So that's where I learned how to like read music, stuff like that. But I really picked up drums in middle school. So, and no, I did not take lessons. It just kind of hit me one day. I was like, man, I just really want to get into drums. And so I did. And I just taught myself. I got a drum set for Christmas one year, like 7th or 8th grade, I guess. And I just started listening to my dad's 8-tracks and records.
Nice.
And learned to play drums to like Chicago and the Beatles, and
And then you spent the rest of your life trying to figure out how to actually play in tempo, because 8-tracks would always kind of warble and they'd sometimes slow down and speed up and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
that's what all drummers can blame it on.
Exactly. So if you can play to a moving 8-track, you can be the best drummer in the world. So you have to modify.
Because you are the best drummer in the world.
Oh, thanks, man.
Awesome. Well, one of the things, I thought was interesting about what you said is, when you came up, you were hounding the worship leader. I think I was very much the same way when I was taking guitar. It was like, I want to play. And I think sometimes as worship leaders, we just want a drummer so bad. You don't even get to like have that choice. There's not somebody hounding me. And I probably lean the other way sometimes, where people kind of ask me about it a little bit, and I almost make it a little bit hard for them because I just want to know if they really want to do it.
Right.
But I've spent enough time with drummers and just musicians in general. But there's something about the drummers to me, and maybe it's just more noticeable because they're such a backbone of the music. But it seems like a lot of times there's not so much urgency about their ability. Is it kind of one or the other? Are you just like, nuts, I want this so bad, or I just don't care? Is there a middle road?
I think if you care about playing and you have drive, that's going to get you further. You're going to want to practice. You're going to want to get better. You're going to want to keep up with new stuff like the tracks, click tracks. If you're just doing it as like a hobby, you can keep a beat, but you don't have the drive to get better or teach yourself or learn new things. Like that's not the person that I would want if I was a worship leader. That's not the person I would want on the kit playing with me. I want some, and two, being a worship drummer, I think having that drive, I don't know. I don't think you can be a worship drummer and not be driven. You know what I mean? I don't think you can just. Point. I don't think you can just sit back there and play. Like you have to be a part of the song, and You're going to want to be there.
Yeah. So do you have anything, sometimes I feel like, especially with kids, if you've taught kids before, sometimes it doesn't catch right away. I've had a number of guitar students that they start out and their very first lesson, they're saying, I'm like, what kind of music do you listen to? And they're like, I don't really listen to music. You're just like, what are you doing here? Like, you just assume this is going to go so terribly. And like a little bit of time goes along and all of a sudden something catches and they just kind of get that fire and they get rolling. Do you have any tips on kind of looking for that in people that you've worked with? Can you look at some and go, okay, yeah, this is where the growth happened. It happens around this age, or is it something more that it's just kind of like, hey, what's that sign that somebody's really grabbed it?
I've taught a few like personal one-on-one lessons with some kids, and the last one that I worked with, I guess he was probably about 11, 12 maybe, I'm not sure. But after we go through the whole, this is how you hold your sticks, this is a quarter note, and kind of the basics on the basic beat. I try to get my students to where they can sit down and play with the record or CD, MP3, whatever, and just have fun with it, because it's like I put out that blog a while back about how you can play one beat to pretty much any song in that time signature and you can get through it, So once you get a kid to learn that aspect of it to where they can have fun, then when they come and start asking me how to do stuff like that, really is where like, oh, okay, well, he's like really interested, and then the growth just starts from there.
Yeah. So just kind of, I think there's a key there is trying to jump into something pretty quickly, right? To not spend, I did piano lessons for 6 years and, besides playing Mary Had a Lamb, I didn't play anything that actually sounded like something real forever. Because it was just like, okay, we're going to teach you this, then you have to learn this. Then you have to learn this, and you have to learn this. And it was so frustrating because I just really wanted to just play songs.
Right.
And I went through 6 years of piano and never really learned that. I learned to read sheet music and everything else. But I think there's something about drums. I think there's something about guitar, about kind of other instruments that are simpler. Like I hate to knock piano. Ryan's a great keyboard teacher, but you realize as you watch one of his keyboard lessons compared to like one of your lessons or, a bass lesson or something, and you just realize there's so much more to piano. So I don't want to knock piano players. Sorry, Ryan. I'm not knocking you. I love you. But at the same time, being able to jump into something that you actually enjoy and that sounds like music right off the bat, I think is a really clutch piece for that.
Yes.
What are some things that you can kind of introduce to a band setting, to somebody who's like a beginner drummer?
Yeah. So, one of the things that's so critical is playing to a click track. A lot of people argue that, but it's so, if you practice to a click, you're gonna get that internal clock to where if you don't play with a click, you're still gonna have that internal clock. It's just gonna be in your brain. It just makes you better. One thing that I would say, just be okay with criticism, coming up as a younger drummer. It's not that people are coming down on you. Just take it as constructive criticism. I think that's a big thing as far as coming up, being a younger drummer.
Unless it's middle of the congregation that's just scowling at you the whole time because you exist.
Yeah,
that doesn't count.
Yeah, we're talking about like the worship leader and other band members at this point.
People that you would respect their opinion.
Right. Everybody else you don't care about.
Do you ever get some rough advice?
I can't really like put a finger on like something specific, but all around just being an experienced drummer too, be okay with constructive criticism. I go in and do studio sessions all the time and producer will be like, let's not do this, let's do that. I don't like what you're doing there, let's do that. and you just have to be open to that, like, oh,
They
you're
don't
doing,
mince words.
yeah. So you're doing this on the hi-hat.
They don't coach
Yeah.
you gentle.
Don't do that. Don't do that at all. You just have to be okay with it, because it's not that they're coming down on you. It's they have a painted picture of what they want their song to sound like, and you're working for them, But same thing goes for a worship leader. It's their vision because they are leading, and you just have to help with that, So criticism, constructive criticism.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a whole podcast just on how to deal with criticism, because there's all kinds. There's constructive and there's not constructive, and there's just downright trolling. And as people who teach music
Right.
on the internet, we have plenty of stories of criticism.
Trollers.
Yeah, so
exactly.
we can dive right into that. Okay, cool. So let me ask you this: How do you as a drummer, you're such an integral part of the song. On the website you've talked about how you're kind of the driver, right? You might say the engine of a song, right? That's kind of really moving it along.
Sure.
How do you lead
Yeah.
worship as a worshiper? How do you lead worship from the drums?
One thing that I always say is, and I think I've told you this too, is I just make myself a part of the song. You just have to climb into that song. You have to feel it, and you have to. There's a lot of things that go into this question. For one, I'm very self-conscious when it comes to, I don't want to be the loudest person in the room. Playing to the room, super important. What kind of sticks are you using? What kind of cymbals? How do you tune your drums? All of this plays into leading. You don't want to be super loud because you don't want to distract from the message that's being given in song, So, that's one way. Just being dead on, practice, be ready, come to rehearsal, practice, when you show up on Wednesday night to run through the stuff for Sunday, that's not practice. That's not practice time. That's rehearsal time. You go over.
Oh, that's a good difference.
You go over what.
You mean it's not the same?
Yeah. So you practice at home. You rehearse to prepare. You go over your transitions. You go over starting, stopping. If you're going to change a section, okay, maybe we're doing the chorus twice, but the second time we're going to do a down chorus before you hop, So stuff like that. Being prepared, huge in leading worship anywhere.
So let me ask you this, when you're in that setting, do you find, whether, if you're playing to a click or whether or not, do you find, is there a lot of give and take that's going on with the band? Is the band kind of working together? Are they paying attention to you? Is the worship leader kind of cueing you for different things? Are you kind of in your own world, kind of laying out what's supposed to happen, and you're kind of on a track and you just go with that? How do you approach it? And then what do you enjoy the most?
So when you play as a drummer, what I always think about is my eyes are always on the worship leader, because, I play with people, especially if you're not playing to tracks, to loops. He might want to build, a section, and, what does he do? Does he stomp his foot, to get everybody to, just to kind of say, hey, we're bringing it up here. If he wants to stop, if he wants to lay out, my eyes are always on the worship leader, because unless you're locked to a track, a loop, or, whatever, a multi-track, anything can happen, so, but yeah, as far as listening, I'm always in my zone, but I'm never zoned out. Like, I'm always listening to guitar parts. I'm always listening to vocals. Should I do this fill here? Probably not, because that's going to walk all over the vocal right here. Bass, drums and bass. Always be listening to your bass player. You know, you have to lock it in. There's nothing else to be said about that. You know, so
How does that interaction happen? Is it you're laying down a groove and you're like, oh, maybe do something more with the bass there? Is it the other way around? Is it kind of a mix of the two? How do drum and bass, how do they actually play together?
yeah. So, well, one thing is if you practice, and you're playing something just like the record, they're probably gonna know generally what pattern you're gonna have on a kick. If you're changing something up, maybe you're doing a different version. And this is like in rehearsal, we'll just start jamming, we'll play with everybody, and then I'll just talk to them, say, hey man, what are you doing here? And honestly, I think coming from
Hold on, you actually ask one of the other musicians what they're doing in order to define what you do?
I do.
It's amazing.
And that's another thing. Always be open, have an open mind. I'll ask, I'll just say, hey, what are you doing right here? What feels good? And, maybe one time he'll follow whatever I'm doing for a song, or maybe, he'll be like, oh, I think we should do this here. And I'll be like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. So I'll do this and I'll follow him. But, as far as playing with your bass player, every single note that the bass player plays doesn't have to be a kick drum, they're going to play, because you can play, like give some backbeat, like up on the snare, play on the ands, and he might do like a little walk thing. I don't know. Not every note, it doesn't have to be boom, 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 every time. So,
though it can be sometimes.
It can be. Just listen. Critical listening.
So how do you balance creativity then as a drummer? You talk a lot about, playing simple, playing to the click. You teach the lessons the way that a drummer plays them on a record. Mm-hmm. That's the way that you do it. When you're playing on your own, how much of that is yours? How much of that do you feel is you versus just mimicking what's supposed to happen?
I feel like I follow the structure of the song, no doubt. But when I play on a Sunday morning, I don't necessarily play it like the record. I kind of like to do my own thing, as long as it's along the same lines and it's not going to mess anybody up, and a lot of it that goes back into tying it to playing to the room. If something's being played really fast, like a 16th note thing on the hat, that's going to tend to be played louder, at least when I play. If you've got something fast, you're going to be wanting to play it louder. So I might scale it back down, just play eighth notes or do something different. But I'm creative, but I keep the same structure going. I don't veer away from that, because that could tend to jack somebody up. But
yeah, you're on the road, but maybe it's just kind of a little bit wider
right.
road.
It's got a little emergency
movement.
lane over there that I kind of pull into sometimes, and I'm just cruising.
You're like Kramer on Seinfeld doing the luxury lanes on the highway.
There you go.
They're extra wide. They're first class lanes. That's how you play.
It's awesome.
Okay, so I'm gonna pepper you with a couple of things here real quick, and then we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll take questions from the chat room that's live here. So let's say I'm a worship pastor, and I'm like, I have a young drummer, and he really struggles with rhythm, like just being able to play in the pocket. What do you tell him to do?
What I would say is back to the click thing. Practice with the click. That's like hammer that into everybody. Practice with the click
with an actual hammer.
Yes, 8-pound sledge. 8-pound sledge. I heard someone else talk about this on a workshop thing that I watched on YouTube one time, and he said that a lot of worship leaders throw a lot of inexperienced people into the driver's seat as far as drums go. If you're not ready, then you don't necessarily need to be up there. A good drummer For one thing, if you're playing with click tracks, if you're not familiar with clicks, you can't do it, you can't stay with everybody, then that's bad. Like you might as well not even be up there. You can get away with a worship set without having a drummer. People did it for years, back when drums were like the evil instrument brought into church, right? But
you can just stomp on a tambourine if you're a guitar player.
Pull like a Mumford and Sons thing to where you just have a bass drum up there and just dance around. But anyway,
make sure you can nail it though.
Exactly. See, you have to be able to play with the click too, Jason. So it's not just a drummer. But if they're not ready,
I do just fine. I actually had a girl on our team one time. She's like, "Oh, I'll play tambourine." I'm like, "Perfect. Here, just hit it on 2 and 4." And she's like, "Yeah, no problem." And then she starts singing, and then she just kind of starts shaking it around. I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Never mind. I'm taking it back. No tambourine for you.
Give me my tambourine.
I'm going back to stomping it."
There you go. Yeah. So if they're not ready, they're not ready. But if they are, just work with them. Practice to a click. I don't know what to do other than that. If they're just struggling with rhythm, sign them up for a worship artistry account so that they can, learn.
Sponsored by
worship
exactly.
Artistry. Yeah, man, just pour into them. Get them to grow. Again, going back to that heartbeat or drive, like you got to have drive to want to practice, to want to get better.
I think it's an interesting thing to actually be kind of to pull what you're saying a little bit and say to be available to all your musicians, right? So that, hey, everybody's there to help each other out.
Right.
And, it can get to the place where it's always just kind of like asking things from them, but not actually pouring back into them.
Exactly.
And so I think, and it's easy for that to happen with the drummer because sometimes they're behind a cage and sometimes they're usually late. They're still setting up,
Y'all are tuning, whatever.
So, but they're those things where it's like if we're in a space of where we're all there to help each other get better, and we can speak the truth to each other, but at the same time also being able to encourage and say, "Man, that was really great. You know what? We could really use from this. Wait, maybe we can work on this, and here's a way to do it. Here's a way to kind of like Paul Balash. I one time heard he was talking on when he was interviewing with Daniel, he was saying that he actually had a drummer where he told him like, just you have a 15-minute commute to work. Just bring a stick with you while you're driving and just put a metronome on and just hit it on that metronome."
Right.
And he was just like, man, it was after about like 3 months, he's like, "Man, what is going on? You're right there in the pocket." And he was like, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I just been doing the metronome back and forth to work thing." I was like, wow, it's a great idea.
It's that internal clock, man.
Hey, drummers can practice anywhere.
Exactly.
Unlike guitarists or worse yet, keyboard players, just pushing out an upright piano out to the campfire.
Poor guys.
All right. So let's take some questions. These are all live. These came from us from the chat room. We meet here at 2 p.m. Central Time every Wednesday. So if you want to jump in, if you're listening to the podcast, you can just join us live, and then you don't have to worry about member mail. When using a click, do you use it in just the drummer's ear, or does the whole band use it?
Well, I have done both of these scenarios. I've used a click, and then the band follows me, and then what we do at my church currently is everyone uses in-ear monitors, and we have, the little Aviom type things beside us that we can do our own little mix. So everybody hears the click, the way we do things now. If you have that luxury, I like to have everyone hearing the click, because there's times in certain songs to where the drums might drop out, and then if everyone doesn't have a click in their ear, you're stuck trying to do some little tastefully quarter note, eighth note on the ride cymbal, while it's a down chorus or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it always tends to not be as tasteful as you think it should sound. But I've done it the other way too, to where I've just had a click in my ear, and then you have to do that. You have to do something to keep everyone in time. Or if you have the option of a pedal or just your hand to start and stop the click, when you get to that down section, you can kill the click and just let the worship leader do his thing, and then you can kick it back in and kind of ease it back into, again, if you have that internal clock in your head, you can kind of get everyone going, start the click, and then hop back on it, kind of thing. So there's a couple ways to do things. If you have the luxury, I mean, I love it when everyone has a click, in their ear, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, too, it depends on how tight your band is. If you think about from a perspective of, it's like I used to play with the band. We'd always play with the same band. And, we'd play out, and then we also play and stuff. And we would have parts and songs where that was like the best part of it, because we would just kill it and back in. And there was like no pickup, no nothing. But we all were just so tuned in, had practiced so much together. It was a very natural thing to happen. And we'd nail it like every time.
Right.
But, when you're working at church, when you've got different people, if you're mixing and matching players all the time, you're not getting that same experience. You're not sitting there practicing, meeting like 3 times a week to practice because you have a show on, on Saturday night and Sunday night. You know what I mean? So I think knowing how good your band is can kind of influence that for sure.
For sure. Yeah, they have to be top notch to, to follow the drummer, because that's what you have to do. Everybody has to be on the same page as you.
How about this? Here's another great question. How do you get drummers to play quietly when they reckon it affects their ability to play when they try and play softly? Is it a technique issue or is it a mindset? I haven't heard. I don't know if I've ever worked with a drummer that hasn't complained about being told to be quieter.
First of all, I like the word reckon in this question because I'm from the South and we use it a lot.
I grabbed it.
Well, I reckon what you could do is, for one thing, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can play with, is your drummer currently playing with sticks? What size sticks are they playing with? This is a cool question for me just because of a situation that I was just given at my current church. I used to be in a drum cage, okay? Not like a shield around the drums. Like, it was a straight up box of plexiglass.
Did it have bars?
Yeah, I think there was like a lock, and they had to like unlock me from the sound booth to get out, But we have
it kept the congregants away from you.
Right. That's probably what it was.
You. It's for your own protection.
Right. Don't feed the animals.
Soundmen need that.
So they just moved me out. So I'm out, no shield, no cage, no nothing. So I'm out in thin air now.
What was the move? Why was that? If you don't mind my asking.
Okay, yeah. So we did this Christmas Eve service. We do one every year. But we kind of tried to do something different this year. And our pastor just really liked the vibe that the open drum, open band sound, sounded like. So the next thing I knew, I think it was 2 Sundays after that, I walk in and boom, there's my drums sitting on a riser without a box around them. So it was awesome for me. But then you have to go into, okay, well, again, I'm super self-conscious about being the loudest person in the room. And being a drummer, you kind of don't have a choice but to be somewhat loud in the room. So I'm playing with hot rods right now. And if you're not sure what hot rods are, they're like little dowels that are taped together. You can get them at, any music store pretty much. So I've been playing with that. They make a variety of different types of brushes. Some are thicker than others. You have, wire brushes, which are going to be real thin, real soft. And then you start to get into your nylon brushes. You start to get into the thicker side of things. They make broomstick brushes, which are really cool. It's just like a really thick, the old school brooms that have like the straw brooms.
Yeah.
So basically, it's made like a hot rod, but it's a broomstick. You're playing with a broom, but it's smaller. So those are cool, and of course, all of those will give you different sounds. But yeah, so I think a lot of it has to be a technique issue more than a mindset issue. But at the same time, you kind of have to practice playing to a room if you're trying to be softer too, because you do have to kind of crawl into that mindset of, okay, I've got to do the same thing that I've been doing in my bedroom with, you know, music blaring in my ears, and I'm just pounding these things. But you have to get that same feel across playing softer. So it's kind of a little bit of both. Like, you need to practice, but it's definitely doable. I've had people tell me that, oh no, you can't play to a room, it's still going to be too loud, but not. I think you can. Like, I think those people are lying.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the best drummers I've ever played with play really, really hard, and it's nice because you can just kind of sit in that pocket, kind of a deal. But there's a lot of in a lot of churches that's not even an option,
Right?
You know, so I have seen, you know, most of the time that, like I said, they'll complain if they have to quiet down, but a really good drummer actually will look at it as a challenge and go, okay, I can do this, and trust their ability and trust their confidence level and learn. It might take a little while. It might be a little bit of a learning curve, but that's part of expertise. You're not, as a musician, you're never just stuck. You know, you're never just, I can't get better. I can't get better. It's impossible. There's no way I can play that ever. It's like, well, yeah, you can. I mean, but it takes work. It might be uncomfortable, but growing is a fun thing.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's worthwhile. So
And
so
let me
probably
add
a little bit of a mindset in that department.
Yeah, for sure. And let me add one more thing. I caught a glimpse of another question over here to my right, and to add on to this, and it says that his drummer is breaking hot rods even when he plays with them, and it's too loud. And he says that he can't get the tone out of the drums when he doesn't play with sticks. You can tune your drums to get a good tone when using hot rods, okay? And if you're breaking hot rods, I don't know how often you're breaking those, but you are still whopping those things way too loud, okay? You just need to chill. I mean, really, that's the only word. Just chill out, relax, play soft, tune your snare to where it doesn't ring, you know, tune it low, make it a gush, you know, a deep gushy sound is the way I like to describe. I love a deep, fat sounding snare. They make
gush is the technical term, though.
Gush is that's a technical. Yes. They make tons of dampening devices out there that you can use, and gaff tape is your friend. You know, just gaff it up. But you can still
What's
get
with
good.
The wallet? I've seen people do a wallet tape down.
Yeah, absolutely. You can use a wallet. Basically, you're just putting something on the head of your. That's more for like a snare drum thing, but mainly you're just putting something on that head to kill the overtone, you know. And so you can get good tone while not playing with sticks. I mean, look at the guys that play jazz and play with brushes. You know, I mean, there's pros out there that are playing jazz music, and you know, certain songs they only play with brushes, and they still get marvelous tones out of their drums. So you can make it happen. You have to have an open mind. You can't be one of those people that say, well, my drums just aren't going to sound good if I don't play with sticks, you know, and it's not true. It's not true.
Well, here's kind of a follow-up question. Somebody asked, can you explain playing to the room? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Okay, yeah. So
what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So playing to the room, you set your drums up in an arena. Okay, just picture
if you get the chance to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just take like Madison Square Garden or something, right? So it's kind of an arena. So you put your drums in that room. In order to play and feel, for the people to feel what you're playing, you have to play louder, you know? You're going to be using sticks, of course, most likely, for most of your music. But then, again, that's where microphones come into the aspect of things to crank your drums up. But still, you know, you set your drums up in a big, huge room, you're going to need to fill that room, okay? You set your drums up into a small room, you're going to need to fill that room, but what it's going to take to fill that room is going to be a lot less. So that's where we're talking about kind of dampening your drums down a little bit to where they're not ringing, you know, and singing over all the other instruments. So deep, earthy tones, gushy, fat snares, toms, kind of deaden them down a little bit to where they're not ringing, no overtones. Again, dampening devices, gaff tape works. So
It
just
sounds way better. If
Yeah,
you're playing to the room, it sounds a million times better than someone who's not playing to the room.
It does. And like for my church that I'm in right now, the sound engineer has to crank up the mics. What's in the front of house system has to overcome what spills off of the stage. So just think of that. Like if you're sitting out there, you don't want to hear stage spill of cymbals or toms or snares. You want to hear what's coming out of the speakers. So you just need to play lighter, tune your drums differently. Maybe I can do a blog here coming up on how to tune your drums, to play the room, or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, Josh does some killer blogs over at Worship Artistry. You can check those out in the green room. They're all under drums. So
thanks, man.
Hear plenty more from Josh. This is great. Actually, comment over here. Eric Rudd says the analogy I use: your band balance is a 100-floor building, and if the drummer uses up 98 floors, you're limiting all the other players to those 2 remaining floors.
Exactly.
I think that's a great analogy. I think playing in a band environment is such a different environment than playing in your own room. It's just a different world. And so that's one of the biggest learning curves we can actually have.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
let me let's see. There's one or two more great questions here. Joey Colson asks, how do you explain scaling things down to a new drummer when the recording has more instruments tracks than you're going to use on a Sunday morning? How do you talk about fitting into that? Do you mention 100-floor buildings? That feels like that's right in there.
I have not, but that's a really good analogy. I'm gonna have to use that, Eric. I appreciate that. So yeah, scaling stuff down. If you're not, chops aren't everything. The most important thing is the pocket, keeping everybody locked in, and simple. Sometimes less is more. If you're not ready for that huge tom part on the bridge, kind of do something different. You don't have to do all the technical, moving parts of certain stuff. Just scale it back down to that, 2 and 4. Like if it's, it might not work for everything, but the bridge, a lot of songs, the bridge is kind of like the building point, kind of hype, so instead of 2 and 4 on the snare, or if it's some crazy tom part, just do a quarter note thing, just build, just kind of build stuff up, so you don't have to do it just like the record. If you're not ready, the most important thing is don't do something that's going to mess other people up. Keep it simple, keep it
play
locked.
Outside your ability. Right?
Exactly.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, but one thing it's a hard thing to actually teach musicians, but we try and talk about a lot in the lessons is actually playing to the spirit of the song and the spirit of the part. So, we teach very exact parts when we sit down. We go, okay, here's this guitar part, here's this bass part, here's the drums, here's what they're doing. But there's also just a level of interpreting, well, what is this instrument trying to accomplish? Because, like, for example, if I take a guitar part, usually there's like 4 or 5 electric guitars on any recording, and I have to distill them all down into one part to teach so that one guitarist can cover that part.
Sure.
It's like the hardest thing that I do. But so much of that comes from just sitting there and going, well, what are they trying to accomplish here? Okay, here we're trying to lift. Okay, so let's do that. Here we need to add to the rhythm. So let's do this more rhythmic part. Here we need this to be big and the vocals just need to take over. So we're going to add this chord part. It's looking at the part that you're playing and going, what purpose does that serve? And it's kind of more of an overview, kind of a meta idea, right? Rather than micro looking at every little individual thing and asking, okay, well, what is this drum part trying to communicate? Are we trying to move, or are we trying to scale it back? Trying to be big, trying to be small. It's kind of approaching those from the spirit of that. And so, and sometimes as a worship leader, that can be in the communication and just kind of go, hey, what we're trying to accomplish here is this kind of feel. So maybe we can do something more like that. So just kind of learning to communicate in that way, I think, is really important.
For sure, man. That's good. What else we got? Here's one. All right, here's the final question. We're going to close in on this.
Do drummers follow theory and scales at all, or are they irrelevant to you? Basically, what this person is asking is, are drummers actual musicians?
Yeah, that's so messed up. That's so messed up. I don't read music as a drummer. I don't. I grew up reading music. Like I said, in the beginning, where I learned how to play the trumpet, and I did trumpet and band and all that good stuff. But yeah, I don't read music. When I'm learning a song for Sunday or anywhere really, I just listen to the recording and I listen to what the drummer's doing and I try to match that. I rehearse that. Even when I do studio sessions, we go off the Nashville number charts, but all the ones, fours, and 5/7 flat split 6, I don't pay attention to that. I'm just using that as a counting method, that's just how I count and remember the structure of the song, basically. So, and I can tell, I guess when I'm looking at that, like you can tell when chords are changing and stuff, but again, I'm not really using that. So I don't think there's
Nobody's
probably
asking you to play in the key of F.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna change key to B flat.
Yeah.
So Josh, adjust accordingly.
Yeah. So now on that aspect of things, like there are songs that, people, producers will be like, okay, I want you to tune your drum to this, to match the key of the song. Like there is that. But, as far as playing in worship music, that's just not really in that style, I don't think. Like you just make sure your drums sound good. Make sure you know what you're doing in the song. You're good. Like there's probably a lot of music teachers that are listening to this right now. I'd probably want to punch me in the face, but you don't have to read music to be a drummer. You don't.
Yeah,
there. I said it.
I think that's a fair statement. I think in a lot of ways you don't need to read music for a lot of things.
Yeah, some of the greatest musicians that I've ever heard, don't read music at all whatsoever.
I actually it's funny, when we started the website, I actually had to basically relearn how to read music to do the tabs for the website, because I would, I had to actually put out all the timing and all the counting, and I had for so long just listened to a part and you just play it. And so it's like trying to actually go through and count out, like, oh, this happens on the 1 E and,
right, exactly,
like
yeah.
Those kinds of things just took a while to get the hang of. And it's probably, but it doesn't mean that it's not necessary for some people. Like I've definitely had students who in general just learn much better when we're counting through things and we're talking about quarter notes and, hey, this is what we're doing and here, let's count this. And there's other ones that, I was much more grew up in the space of just, who cares? Let's just play it and then I'll play it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's just different learning styles. Cool, guys. Well, Josh, thanks so much for being here. Thanks to everybody in the chat room. Thanks, Bethany, for putting all that together. Thanks for those of you who went and reviewed our podcast. That's a huge help to us. So if you guys like what you hear, you like what we're doing, please, comment on Member Mail, go to our iTunes podcast and leave reviews. That's really, really helpful to us, especially as we're just kind of starting out. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for telling people about us. And thanks for showing up on finding time at 2:00 Central on a Wednesday to make it here. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't you guys have jobs?
This is awesome.
Working? Yeah, it's fantastic. You guys make it way more exciting for us than us just talking in a room to each other. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.